In our discussion, he will have savings, so what we discussed was how he would be able to save and where he would be able to save with his current funding so that he could make this happen, because that's what he felt they needed as a department. And you know, he was speaking for that department after discussion with staff and what they really needed, and so I helped him figure out how he would be able to make it work, and I was comfortable with that. So I went ahead and said, in the discussion I had with him, that I could support the extra and that we could make it work. That was our discussion.
So how do you justify ag not having a budget for a vehicle?
At the time we put the budget together, he hadn't had time to assess and know that this vehicle was getting so high in the mileage that they wanted to replace it. So it was kind of, how could he make it work with what he had in dollars, and where could he trim and cut so that he could make that upgrade happen?
Okay. Is 6,200 the place where you put
Correct.
vehicles?
Yes.
Could you tell me why Honey Lake TV has been approved for a vehicle? You got
I don't have
$20,000 for Honey Lake TV. They didn't get a vehicle this time.
They're
but-
not part, that's Honey Lake TV is a consultant that the county works with, so they actually have proposed that budget
It was approved.
as part of the budget process, right? I don't
Yeah.
know, they're not part of the fleet program. They're not part of the county fleet program.
Why would you give them that vehicle?
But they would be purchasing with their funding.
I don't, excuse me, if I may, Karen Bass, County Auditor. I don't think that is a vehicle. I think it's equipment for transmitters and other Honey Lake TV reception.
Is that non-capitalized?
It's capitalized.
6,200 would be anything capitalized.
Yeah.
Vehicles
It's
are
not just
otherwise.
vehicles, any kind of capitalized equipment.
But Jen, as going through the 173 pages, the bulk of that is 6,200 is for vehicles.
Not necessarily, no.
Not necessarily.
Most of the county vehicles are purchased through the fleet maintenance budget.
Which has $800,000 in it.
And I think about 600,000, isn't it, as of today?
As
So,
of today?
yeah.
So we should just discount the individual budgets then? We shouldn't care that ag doesn't have?
Well, you need to
money?
drill down further and find out what the purpose is, whether it's equipment or vehicle or,
Well, ag doesn't have a budget for, and
they would require an appropriation transfer. And I
Did
think
you
from
get
what
that?
Julie said, that there is, was a review of the budget, and it appears that there are adequate appropriation available to cover it.
from fleet maintenance budget.
Only for the upgrade. He only has to cover, fleet will only cover what he was gonna replace at equal value. So if he had a $10,000 vehicle that he was replacing, he can only go into what he has paid into the fleet for. What he wanted was something more, because they just can't make it work with what they had. So he only has to cover the upgrade with his budget.
Okay. But I thank Mr. Chapman for bringing the point that it does need a second look.
I think we need some policies and guidelines, framework in place that deals with that exact situation. I mean, I appreciate staff being able, and Julie working with staff to negotiate how to do that, but I think if we have vehicles that are being upgraded from time to time, I think there is a legitimate need for that from time to time, that we have a process that's kind of predefined. It's not a case-by-case thing. So that would have addressed the same issue. I wasn't aware that you had that.
That's the only vehicle, but I appreciate that he came and looked at it before making the decision, and came to the
Yeah.
administration to try to make sure that budgetarily we could make it work,
Well,
and to talk about what he
I'm
really
glad you're
needed.
willing to work with the department. I mean, that's a good sign of things. When I was looking at the property, I saw the vehicles that are being surplus or cycled out, being replaced by these vehicles coming in, and knowing what vehicles are like. I mean, there was some definite changes in the types of vehicles, and I think Melody addressed very clearly some of that justification. And I just assumed that that's what's going on, but, you know, we're on the outside looking in. You guys do this on a day-to-day basis, and we just periodically get asked to approve these monies, and I just want to know what I'm approving.
Okay,
Pass it on, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
any more questions, Kevin? Violet,
I think we need to laugh, and I was just
come to the podium
wondering
and
if
state
there's
your name,
a, huh?
please. Come to the podium and state your name.
I'm just, well, my name's Trouble. You know the name, Well, it's not Lassen County Poet Laureate, I don't know why. Anyway, I think we need a laugh here, and I was just wondering if they're gonna have enough water to run their pool. Thank you.
That's not the item we were discussing.
Motor pool.
That went over my head, I did. Thanks for the laugh.
I did.
Is there any more discussion on this agenda item? If not, we have a motion.
So moved.
And do you have a second? Do we have a second? Any more discussion? Aaron second and Larry made the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody, for that discussion. We will go to H5, juvenile hall report.
Members, we've been working on your report. We met on a couple of occasions with the affected department heads. We're through 2 drafts of the report. I've met with the juvenile court judge and the juvenile justice commission. I've also talked with the people in Williams and Lodi counties. Anyway, it's a complicated report, and in order to give you a more complete document, do a little more research that will come up through these meetings. I just need a little more time. So what I'm requesting here is your direction is to when you want it back. So 26 would be appropriate, but I'm not sure everybody's here because of the holiday.
I was gonna say if you wanted to take it into the first week in December, which would be the 10th of December, that would be acceptable too. We also, I don't know if the other board members received it by name, Mr. Chairman, received a letter from, Judge Verosa, but, I think that needs to be part of the discussion. And I would even go so far as maybe, if it's possible, would be for an invitation to be sent to her to come and be at our meeting and our discussion. I mean, she obviously has taken an interest now in the issue, and obviously from the tone of her letter, wants to see a little bit different change of thinking, and that's very appropriate. But, Judge Bradbury used to periodically wander over from, the courtroom and come into the environment here and participate in the discussion. So I think there's precedent for her to participate if she can work it out with her schedule. Obviously, she may have a calendar that already precludes her ability on that given day, and if you can ascertain from her a time frame that would work better than others, then you can accommodate her schedule, because I think she is an integral part of the outcome of whatever happens.
All right, the consensus will continue this to December 10th, and we'd like to do our judge.
And if she's available in the afternoon and not the morning, then we can maybe set up a time certain and do it like that if necessary.
In the minutes, these things are kind of combined together, so I'll use it as a window to ask again. So the public guardian, is that going to be kind of around that same time frame, or we?
I think so, probably, it might be like a week or two later. We've had a couple of meetings on it, but we obviously focus on the juvenile hall. But we've also had the meetings on animal control, and we'll report back to those.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions on juvenile hall report? If not, nothing from the public. We'll go to H6, the pool. Finally got there.
Members, the-
I see 2 very patient young man and young girl, lady there, and a very patient mother. Okay, we're gonna go to the pool. Who's gonna add that, Jim?
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, we want to make sure, and that those who came in later after we adopted the agenda, that, the wording of the agenda has been amended to include adoption of the JPA. But we also indicated, because Mr. Hammond is absent, and he had particularly requested that he be available for this discussion, that the decision on this particular action won't take place until next Monday, when the board reconvenes as a continuation of this meeting, so that all the board members can be present. So whatever we do today is just basically input on where the JPA draft is, and this is Mr. Nichols bringing it back to us after our last meeting a few weeks ago, if not a month or so ago. Since that time, I know Mr. Alba had suggested some changes be made, had a letter that came in, to the file, and that was taken into effect. I understand the city had some proposed changes, whether they made it into the final draft or not, remains to be seen. But the reality is The city last Wednesday night did vote to approve the JPA, so they have adopted it on their side of the fence. And given the fact that we have a document, I had talked with Mr. Nichols a couple times about what I thought was the format, and, you know, there's a lot of wording in here, and I wonder if some of it is even necessary, but rather than getting into a delay situation where things, as we try to sort that out, you know, as a framework and as a working document, it gives the new authority an opportunity to at least get moving, because there are a lot of questions the community would like to have addressed, and the only way they're going to be addressed is if we can get this authority in place to be able to do the necessary investigations that we need to complete the investigations that are there, and come back with a recommended and a proposed plan that people can relate to. And that's not going to happen unless we get it started. So to me, the thing is to let's adopt this and move on, and then it'll be up to them to come back and make the case to the ongoing funding and the development of the pool.
Oh, yeah, we're changing that one.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's obviously, the board has that ability to do that, but at this point in time, whether it was today, if we could have done it, or we wait till next Monday, I'm prepared to adopt the JPA as currently drafted by Mr. Nichols and has been already adopted by the city, and allow us to get the process rolling.
And this is the draft that I sent to Mr. Hancock. I
Yeah.
believe this is limited.
It is, and he represented that this is the
And
same.
this draft includes what the city changes they made.
Well, their changes, I think whatever changes they have, now, they can maybe speak to that, but I know the changes that Mr. Albaugh was interested in with his letter that he gave the board before he left on his health trip, you know, were incorporated in, and on the front page, it's delineated as to what those changes were. And a lot of them were fairly minor, and they were designed to clarify, and they were ones that I would have felt, you know, would be necessary as well. So, I mean, I was comfortable with that part of it. But the bottom line is the city has an adopted version, which is this version, and initially we had talked about having a joint meeting like later this week of the two bodies with the intent that if we had some minor little, you know, adjustments to be made, that we make them, and then we, you know, like a conference committee in Congress or something, we finally adopt a final version. But I don't think that's necessary because they've already taken action, they've been willing to accept what has been put forth here as a working document. The good news, and I think this is what caused me to maybe not be so, have my knickers twisted up over it, is the fact that there is an amendment process to the JPA, where if the JPA in dealing with the document finds that there's something that doesn't work or isn't workable, they can adopt an amendment to the JPA, and then that amendment would come back to the city and the county to act on, to ratify it, to basically amend it if we need to do that. But if this can get the job done by getting it going, you know, let's move on. We could sit here and debate this issue for another 9 years, and by that time we'll all be dead, so.
Well, the two youngins there, they went.
Well, I'm talking about these guys.
You might be old, but I'm not. I have a couple concerns, I don't know where you wanna start.
Yeah, this is what the purpose of the discussion is, the agenda item.
Okay, one of my concerns is, we need collateral to get this on. Who, if the city or the county doing that, to me it should be both. Not the county put up the collateral, or not just the city, it's a joint project, we both should put up equal collateral.
And that, I would say the JPA would have to work out that, and that would have to be the basis of whatever they would, if that became a necessity, to define how that's gonna be done.
But the JP can do that without, right now, if we put it behind the JPA, they could say, you know what, the county's gonna put up all the collateral.
No, I don't think so.
The JP won't be able to pledge county
No.
collateral to that without your permission.
No, anything like that would have to be agreed to by the.
We don't have to agree on that before, that don't have to be written into the JPA.
No. I mean, if your JPA, if the JPA has its own collateral that's independent of either the county or the city, they would have the freedom to pledge that. The reality is they don't. So if they need collateral, they're gonna have to come back to both the city council and the board and get the board and the council on board to incorporate, if that becomes a necessity. I think rather than trying to prejudge what they're gonna do, let's let them do it and come back to us. We hold the purse strings because of the $200,000 allocation.
That's my next question. if I understand it correctly, as it sits now, 5 years from now, the city can pull out, they would not give me no more money, pulling out of the JPA, then it would all go to the county. Or it could be the opposite, the county could pull out and it all go to the city.
I think if,
That's what it says in here.
you know, if either entity pulls out, the assets are dissolved, so it doesn't mean one or the other goes. So whatever the assets are divided, and
So if the city or the county pulls out, the whole doors are locked.
it could theoretically could be if that's what, the action they're taking. Now, that's assuming they survive the onslaught of pitchforks and torchlights from the community to them saying that you can't shut down.
What I don't want is obviously, the city put in 200,000 a year, the county put in 200,000 a year for 15 years. If the city or the county was to pull out 5 years, not 6 years, whatever, would the other entity, government entity, be responsible to put up now 400,000 a year?
Not under this.
I need clarification to that, because it's not all right.
I don't think so.
I mean, I think it clearly says on page 5, section 9.2, that each one is obligated just $200,000 a year. And it is subject to your annual appropriation cycle. If either party,
But I mean, if a party pulls out, the other one's got no choice.
if the party pulls, first of all, it's gonna depend when they pull out. If they pull out before the pool is constructed, then obviously your contributions will be returned. That would be
Right.
fairly
But
simple.
don't say it, it's not happening in March, but at any time, either entity with 6 months notice
Could terminate,
you can terminate.
yes.
So if that happens, let's say a city does that 5 years from now. Now, the county's got a choice. Put a lock on the door, no more swimming pools, or to put up 400,000 a year.
That would probably be one of the policy issues before you would not be legally obligated to do that though.
Well, I mean, that to me is a big issue. It could go either way. It could be the county pulling out and leaving the responsibility to the city for 400,000 a year, or lock the door. That's what I don't want to happen.
I mean, if either agency pulls out, the JPA is effectively terminated, it's a two-party agreement.
Well, first of all, okay, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not saying that possibly, couldn't evolve.
We know today anything can happen.
And I gotta tell you, if we worry about everything that could evolve in our life in a given day, most people wouldn't get out of bed, and they'd just die there, so. Yeah. But anyway, the point that I would say is that when it comes to the viability of the proposal, the program is gonna be dependent upon the JPA, that board and the staff that they would assemble to put together the project. And we're gonna have hopefully a great appreciation of what they put forth before the thing is built. And if the proposal they put forth is half-baked or half-cocked and is not gonna be viable, either entity, I guarantee you, either board has the ability to pull the pin and, as Mr. Nichols has pointed out, whatever assets we have evolve back to and we just don't build a pool because it's not a feasible proposal. So I think there's gonna be a lot of pressure on this JPA board to perform, not only for the community's benefits, but for the two respective boards' benefit. And there's gonna be an accountability that's not gonna be just annually. It's gonna be day to day, and it's gonna be month to month, and it's gonna be year to year. So this idea that, we wash our hands and they're off on their own and we are no longer responsible, is kind of a fallacy. Because first of all, 2 of the members are gonna come from this board and 2 is gonna come from that board. And so there's that direct involvement there to make sure that, and if things start going sideways for whatever reason, okay, this thing is designed to be a bare bones basic facility. And if all of a sudden they're creating a $30 million giant complex, that would rival anything you'd find around the state, they're running them up. We as a board have the ability to pull that in. I mean, I think the limited means that they're gonna have to work with, they're gonna have to be very creative, they're gonna have to be very judicious. And more importantly, they're gonna have to be very respectful of the public, because ultimately the public's gonna want to support what it is they're doing. So if they don't do a very good job, there's gonna be not just an unhappy board of supervisors, or unhappy city council, there's gonna be an unhappy community. So I think the pressure to perform is going, at the highest level, is going to be the expectation of this.
Larry, then we'll get the public.
Yeah, Marty, maybe you could explain what the option where either side has available to pull out of the deal was also stuck out at me, in the first draft, and as an area of concern. Why does it have to be in there?
I mean, first of all, I'm not sure that it's legal to have an agreement that's in perpetuity, and nobody can withdraw from it.
But it's not, but
But
it's
there's
not,
also,
isn't it,
but there's also just the policy issue. I mean, you know, should this board of supervisors today bind the board of supervisors 10 years from now?
We do that with other things.
In some cases you do.
In a lot of cases we do. In most cases we do, in fact. And it's not, you know, open-ended, never-ending. Isn't we're committing for a certain amount of years with
Well, there are cases. I mean, obviously, a number of years ago, when you borrowed money for the jail, you were committed for the 20s. There are
So I mean, I don't know, but I'm tired of getting that as the reason why, because it's not true. We say we can't commit funds to future boards. We do that almost every week.
Okay.
But
I mean,
I
you
think
do
it's
it
used
represents
as a
you.
reason, you know?
But again, I think that's the policy issue of whether or not that's appropriate.
So I mean, if both parties agree to be all in, then you wouldn't have that deal where one says, I changed my mind, and burdens the other side.
So the provision would be that we assign this JPA and we can't withdraw for, no termination clause, we can't withdraw for 10 years, we can't withdraw the pool's bills.
Well, now, isn't it relatively, I mean, what do you need to withdraw? If we want to withdraw the city, you just give a notice, it's like,
90 days before the 1st of July.
and there is really, you could give any reason?
It doesn't say they have to give a reason, it just says true, it says, withdraw. Any city, special district, or the county may withdraw from this agreement effective July 1st of the year, 90 days prior to the end of the fiscal year, written notice has to be given.
I mean, it's like, you know, no more difficult than if you lease in a warehouse and you want to change your mind. I mean, it just seems it's a
That's
substantial
my concern.
investment into the community, and I just don't know why it isn't a more solid partnership than just a 90-day out. I really would like to have a discussion on that. I mean, I agree with Jim that it probably won't happen. It probably most likely won't happen. You can't get tripped up over every little deal, but I mean, this thing to me, doesn't seem like it's a little deal. It seems like the basis of the agreement. You got two sides, and we want to do it together, and it just seems like to have an out clause so easily, you know, achievable for either side is just reckless business.
I mean, if that's the direction the board, I can explore with town council, and maybe nobody could withdraw for 5 years, nobody could withdraw for them, there could be some.
Well, I would say up until the time that you actually start building the pool, I think having an opt-out probably is, you know, safety valve there is probably appropriate. But once you get the facility built, I think the ability to opt out should become far more difficult. Yeah, and, you know, I think it shouldn't be done just for trivial reasons, just because of, let's say, a political change of wind in one body or the other, just because of that. I think it needs to be something that has a little bit of substance to doing that. But you know, there's another issue that comes down to is how you are able to build it. And if you have to go to financing or you use existing resources, those issues have to be sorted out. And I think there's opportunity on both areas. But if you're going to go to, and like in the case of the county, I'm going to throw it out there. I mean, I hear it from some of the critics. Okay, well, let's vote on. Well, they want to vote on something somebody else wants to do, but what they want to do, they don't want to be voted on that. And what they're doing, you know, is being pushed forward without a benefit of the vote. So we can, you know, slice it that way. But when it comes down to the use of these funds, and we talk about worried about the, you know, future boards being able to appropriate the money. You know, if in the next 6 months, if this JPA does its job and puts together a viable proposal, you know, we're going to be lucky if at best to be able to break ground by next fall. I mean, there's a lot of work that has to be done, both on the legal front, on the engineering front, on the finance front, and all those kind of things. And to thread that needle, and it can't be done by casual staff. We can't take any of our existing departments and just say, okay, we're going to count on you to do this piece of that. It's going to have to take a dedicated group of people who will have to assemble and put that together. And the JPA is going to have to figure that out to start with. I mean, they've got a very limited time frame to do that. And my attitude is if we have a viable proposal, okay, and I know there's some folks in the community who want to clamor, they're convinced that we're going to raise taxes. We're talking about doing something with existing revenues and not talking about some sort of a tax increase. And how do you protect that? How do you enforce that? And my attitude is very simple, where a tax vote going to the voters requires a 2/3 vote. But if you're using existing funds and we're afraid to legislate and make that decision, that's okay. Let the people make that decision. And I would say that as far as I'm concerned, I'm becoming more warm to the idea. I'm still kind of sorting it out, but I'm warm to the idea of putting a ballot measure on the ballot next June and let the people vote on it. If they really are interested in supporting a pool, I mean, this would be countywide, and it would have to be voted on countywide. And it would only require a majority vote because we're not talking about new revenue, but to say, to bind and commit the tobacco settlement money for utilization over the balance of its life. It's got 13 years left at $200,000 for 13 years. We need 2 more years. Well, we've got another 50,000 of the 300,000 in the account that's been earmarked for the family resource centers and stuff. So if you take the balance that's not being used, you could easily fund year 14 and 15 and put that on there and have it voted on by the voters to say, we want the tobacco settlement monies for the next 15 years committed as a dedicated earmarked revenue stream. So future boards, not our board, but future boards can't mess with it. And that commitment's there. So the Beaver pool would have a small funding stream, and this pool would have a funding stream. And in that ballot measure, we clearly state that the city council, because they're part of the county, the city council and the board of supervisors are directed to use available resources to fund this operation. So if you have these little political cycles where you have one group or another pushing this one off the bench and that one off the bench and taking over and, okay, now we've got our vote, so let's kill this thing midstream, the voters, let them have it. And I have no problem doing that. And it would not interfere with the project that we're talking about doing. It would basically guarantee that the funding end of it is taken care of, that there's clear direction. So this motion that was in the minutes that we had added, that wording that's in red, instead of being part of the board's thing, saying it's our intent that future boards adhere to that, we submit that to the voters. Now I tell you, if the voters come back and clearly reject the idea that we don't use existing funding, we do not want a pool, okay, then I think that's a clear direction to both boards, and we haven't broken ground, we haven't committed a lot of money, and we can all back off and say, okay, the voters have spoken. Now, the last 2 votes that have taken place, one of them was citywide, and it passed in the city, well in excess of 50%, but just shy of the 66% to impose, that was back in 2004. That was for a big complex, I wasn't talking about something modest. And in 2008, we had the countywide vote that was put on. Bob was on the board. You guys weren't, but it was voted on. And interesting enough, countywide, it passed with over 52%. As you got closer to the city, it was much higher. But because of the fact that it was not, universally up to 66%, the revenue measure that was attached to it. So the voters in our area have voted twice. My constituents twice, your constituents once, have voted in favor of doing something about a pool. So I'm not afraid to proceed with the project to get a pool built, because the voters have made it clear, the majority, that this is what they're interested in seeing. Now, this park that has tried to derail it, and other projects that people, their pet projects they have put on, they've never been submitted to a voter. So to try to put them on a par with the pool project, I think is an offense. And that's why I think when it comes down to it, we need to proceed, Mr. Chairman, and I think it would be nice if the board did it as a unanimous thing. But if 3 members of the board is what it takes to get it done, we get it done. I'm willing to live with that, because we've got to move on with this. And I have no problem with pushing or working with the JPA board as this board of putting even a ballot measure on the ballot next year. And if the board doesn't want to put it on voluntarily, hell, I'll go stand out in front of Walmart with a petition, and we'll do it as an initiative, if necessary, to make sure that the funds that we have available can be utilized for the things that the people have been expressing. Now, just the other day, some of us went back down to Susanville Market. 2 months went by, those jars on the counter, and we counted out another $1,000 that has gone into the pool, pennies for the pool fund. And by the way, that's money I think could also maybe We get a penny for the pool blowing up in Beaver too. So, yeah, they do. But the thing is I think there's a lot of community interest in seeing this done. And they're voting every day with their loose change and with their other contributions. And that's gonna continue to happen regardless of what we do or don't do as a board. And I just, to me, to keep passing this back and forth and doing that and change, what I'd say, let's just adopt this. The things that you're talking about, yes, maybe there are some refinements, let them sort that out and come back to us for maybe future amendments, but let's do it.
I just want, Larry and me are on the same page, so I mean, I just want that to be sure that everyone understands that.
I don't